In this episode of Carlie's Couch, we're exploring purpose. How do you know what your purpose is? Do we even really have one?
Ooh, hello. Happy Monday from me and Marvel if you're watching the thing, and Lexi. She's looking real cute, so y'all should watch the video.
Thank you. How are you, Carlie?
I feel good today. I had a chaotic week. I forgot I had a meeting one day, and that doesn't happen, and I feel like I was just off. But it was a really good week, good things, but I was feeling the chaos. How you doing?
I don't really have too much specific to say right now about how things are going, but they are going well, and I don't have any complaints.
Wonderful. I know it's been a minute, but we bike with the questions from the couch. So this week's question from the couch: what are some side quests slash missions that you have for yourself?
And Carly got a lot of responses to this one, so we'll go through some of them, which are pretty interesting. One person said they wanted to get back to baking. They usually only bake sweets 2 times a year, so they're getting back into doing cookies, cakes, and so on.
There was a lot of interest around canning and food preservation. So someone wants to learn how to make their own pickles, food preservation, canning, fermenting, and building new raised beds for their garden this year.
Another person also said they wanted to set up and maintain a garden to sell at the farmer's market. And maybe, I guess, because of, just the state of the world, people are feeling like they can be more self-sustainable and have an interest in, making sure their spots are set up certain ways. They have certain supplies. They know how to do certain skills. So I think that's commendable. And also, we know that a lot of the foods don't have as much nutrients and et cetera anymore when you're purchasing them from the store. So I think that's a cool thing to learn.
And I absolutely want a garden like Jody's mama. I'm not going to be smoking in it, but I do want one to sit out there. Someone else wants to learn how to sew, and they're just now getting into restoring vintage sewing machines. They also are learning French because they love to go to Paris, so that always helps.
And another person who wants to travel to Scotland is working on learning Scottish Gaelic. So that's pretty cool.
It is. Someone else said that they've actually made it halfway on one of their side quests. They want to visit every state park in Oklahoma, and it only counts if they hike, kayak, or do an actual activity at the park.
That's real. Another person wants to move back to Brazil, study herbalism, bake sourdough bread from scratch, again, which means they've probably already done this side mission, so okay.
Someone wants to get back on a daily meditation schedule, and someone else said their entire life is a side mission.
Somebody else wants to learn how to grow top quality cannabis.
Oh, I'm so glad that you read in between the lines because there was a typo and I was like, why are you growing 2 quality Anyways.
You learn how to spell before you pick up the J.
Someone else wants to do voice acting I'm with you on that. I've always wanted to voice a character ever since they used to show them commercials on Disney. I actually even submitted, back in the day I submitted a tape to try to be a voice actor. And then someone else wants to relearn how to knit, sew, 3D print things, and climb outdoors on ropes 1 time.
Okay. So I see that most of these look like things that you guys are already participating in or have started. So that's cool. And, side missions are important. So I think that we should always have a thing or 2 that you're learning or hoping to set up or whatever. Make a list, if you just want to, when you get an idea about something, just write it down. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. And then sometimes when you're bored or if you're sitting at home or you have some extra money, you go to your list and then you make a plan.
Check it off. I actually recently just checked one of mine off. I've always wanted to learn how to backwards skate. So got to learn how to do that. Not very good yet, but it happened consistently. I did it a few times, so it's a thing.
Are you going to go back and or start to take classes or anything?
I think I will. I at least once or twice to get it down. I want to be able to go backwards around the whole circle thing. And then I was just in the middle going back and forth down the middle in the little slow lane. But I want to be able to skate when they're backwards skaters only.
Do they say that?
Yeah. Oh, they sure do. They were and then you should have seen people
amateurs out
here.
Yeah,
they should. No, but so then they did backward skaters only, and then they were fast backward skaters only. So they were gradually kicking people off. Get your ass off the thing. Now you too,
That's
player.
Funny.
Get your slow ass off of there.
When I got on the when I first touched the wheel to the wood, the lady came running out hold on, with her whistle, doo, doo, doo. I was like, what's happening? She's like, well, the slow people are on the inside. I was like, oh, my bad. I would have thought the slow people were on the outside so you can hold the edge or whatever it is. So she had to whistle and lead me in. I was like, ma'am, we didn't need this whole whistle. She was like,
she turned into an alpha on you.
Right. We didn't need the whole Jamaican whistle for me to go to the middle of the skating rink. But thank you for the safety concerns.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but it makes sense. I guess it makes sense after that. But I'm like, no, even in the tracks, Fast people on the inside lane, slow people on the outside. So no say.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyways, but today we're talking about purpose and how to find it. So what is purpose when people are like, oh, does your life have a purpose? Or what's your purpose? What does that mean to you?
To me specifically?
Yeah.
For me, I could look at it in a few different ways. When people talk about purpose, I feel like there's a lot of different, I don't know, I guess places that can come from. A lot of times it seems like it's more like work or professional centered. But when I think about purpose, the first kind of couple things that come to my mind without like trying to overthink it too bad is that our purpose is to create. And then two, what is purpose? It's like, why are you here? And what were you created to do? And what are you meant to do is the things that I think about.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add on that. I feel like that's similar in line. It's like your why, your reason, your greater reason for being here, and all the things that come into that. And when I was looking up the definitions, it was like the overarching intention that is personally meaningful to you and of consequence to the world beyond yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think usually a more controversial statement is around like if people have a purpose or not. And I know we're going to get into that. So, because I kind of went back and forth there. But I personally, I want to say I don't have a super deep sense of purpose. But I say that because only like literally within the last year did I feel like I kind of got an idea of what that was. And I could talk about that story later. Anything else I feel like was just changed over time or like based on like, you know, some version of like helping people or, you know, kind of the things that I feel are very much like copy paste. And nothing ever felt like very like specific. So I don't, and every day to day, I don't necessarily feel like I like do anything to intentionally like ground in my purpose or like think about it very specifically. Although like when I did realize kind of what I now kind of would say it is like reflected in everything that I do anyway, like with my work and with the way I do most things. So
You want to share that story?
Sure. So I went out to lunch with an associate, I guess, somebody that I look up to in the business world. And one of the things that they were just saying to me at one point is just they were like, "Well, what is your purpose?" And said like, you know, why were you created and put here? And like I immediately was just like I don't know, bro. Like, you know, it's just like I don't have a statement. And I was like, yeah, I don't have a statement for real. And I asked, you know, well, what's your thing? To get an idea of like, what are they even thinking when they ask the question? And he said something about being able to put like young Black folks in positions to something like having work and something like, but you know, had a clean like boom boom bop. So I was like, oh, okay. And the only things that could come to mind, like I was saying a little bit earlier, is just ideas of like, do I care about helping people? Do I care about this or that? Like any good thing I could think of that's like sure, I support it, or, you know, like, cool, I'm with that. And does it feel strong enough to be my purpose? And nothing really felt like a strong thing. So literally like from that lunch though, for like 2 weeks, I was just like so, not really down, but I was like so like kind of defeated because I was like, dang, like I kept thinking about it, like, what is it? Like I could not think of like, what is my purpose? What's my purpose? And then based off of some other events of being out with some friends and some things that they said about me, it was like a couple days later, I just was pondering the question. And I like laid my head on my desk and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's what it is. Like it just came, like I thought about the things that my friends had said like a couple days before. And then I thought about like a movie montage of like going to all these scenes through your life. And I was like, oh, every time I was in a relationship, this happened. Or every time I work with people, this happened. And then it just came to me kind of what it was. And then I started like overthinking and like stressing about like, well, how do I turn that into a sentence? But it was interesting how I'm like, wow, that was a big game changer. And the most interesting part about it, because now I kind of want to tell the story this early, because like all the different pieces, maybe I can come back to it now and like the process of figuring it out and all those things. But yeah, that was my story, and this happened. I don't know, maybe like some October, September, November, December, something like that. Last year, so very recently.
Oh, perfect. And so we'll get into the steps.
Ask me tell that story.
Look, I know, I got excited. No, it's perfect.
Okay.
I've always felt a deep sense of purpose, but I couldn't articulate what it was. But even when I was little, I was like, I feel like I'm here for like a reason. And I mean, also, I grew up Christian.
I never felt like that.
Yeah, I always did, and I part of me is like, is it the trauma? Because like, you know, am I going through these things for a reason? Did I think that just to like validate where I am and make myself have a silver lining? Like, who knows? Anyways, I just think I've always had this big like sense of purpose. And when I was working in Dallas in engineering, making rich white people richer, I was like, this ain't it. Whatever I'm doing, this ain't it. Because initially my idea was to help people build their dreams like in a very physical way, and I thought that was cool. But I love that you said we were here to create, like that is the purpose for whatever our gifts and stuff are.
Well, can I ask you a side question that might take us around, but relevant to what you just said? So what I heard you say also is like when you're working as an engineer, you're like, all right, this ain't it. So does that mean for you, do you equate your purpose with your work, and or that does it, your purpose it could still be something you fulfill even with like your relationships at work, for example, or, you know, in whatever ways, right? So for you, do you feel that it just wasn't aligned enough?
Yeah, it wasn't aligned enough.
Or maybe it was so opposite that it was like clashing?
It was just so disconnected. Like, because we weren't, like, I did Habitat for Humanity and we helped build homes and to help people, but it just seemed like this is just a thing we're going to do every once in a while to be good. And I want, like, if I'm here, I want my whole life to be about things that I really care about. And I just didn't feel that connection. So I don't think that your purpose, like, you have to get paid for your purpose. I think that can be a different thing. And I think you can have a very successful career in something else and then have a very, very purpose-driven, worthwhile life outside of that. But for me, I wanted them to have an intersection. I wanted to be working every day in things that I felt like were, like, super aligned with my purpose.
And I guess it depends on what your purpose is too, because for somebody working in construction, it could be around, you know, developing out the land or building for people. Like, you could still, I feel like there's always a way you could connect it. And that's why it's like, it is having a sense of what you care about is important, because whatever you touch and whatever you do, you can connect it to some sense of like what you're contributing to there. But I can understand for sure, depending on what your purpose is, depending on what the work is, that it could be like, this isn't it, or like, you know, it's a little too off, or just the desire to want to be more in your purpose. And of course, we only have but so much time in the day, so like you going to like volunteer somewhere after work is like, like sure, maybe, but if you could work in your passion, then cool.
Yeah, because I definitely volunteered at, like, my lunch time, I would be at the dog shelter volunteering and doing stuff and coming back smelling like dog. That's crazy. Anyways, but I it's not judgmental in the sense, because I don't think that they have to be aligned, and you very, very much can be purpose driven. But I think it's harder if you don't have one or have a bigger reason or a bigger why in your day to day. I think that's why it's important to know your purpose, because it kind of connects you to something bigger than yourself and can make the hard days feel a little bit better.
I don't know. I understand technically what you're saying, and I'm trying to think about myself, like, in a lot of time that I didn't necessarily focus on any purpose, I also didn't feel lost. But I'm also saying that as a person who not always, but at a certain point from time to time, checking in with my values was an important thing. If I was feeling off, then I would put down like, all right, what am I doing with my day? And then putting my values down. But then all I really kept having to do was looking at them and then connecting the dots, because they were always there. Like, I typically am moving a certain way in my values anyway. It's just sometimes a matter of the recognition of it, and you like recognizing that they're aligned. I don't know if it's not to say like, oh, I haven't been moving in any purpose, but like it also wasn't like the thing pushing me like a certain thought or anything. Like, I didn't have to like have like I've defined my purpose to live in a way that actually is representative of the things I care about.
I think that is.
So defining it might be maybe a different part of the conversation, because there is, look, I'm going to keep talking. Because there is benefit, and I do see a next level in once you've defined it. And what else happens? So maybe it's just like going up the steps.
I think so too, because I say I'm purpose driven, but I really haven't been able to define mine until more recently, maybe like business schoolish, like around the time I moved to like LA and I was figuring it out while I was in business school. Like that's when I was able to define it. But to your point, like I was very value driven and understood those things about myself and still felt purpose driven. So I don't think you have to define it. I think you just keep iterating, which is why we're going to get into the steps of like, how do you actually start to find your purpose? And so the first thing is like life experience. I think a lot of times can dictate what people care about, how they want to make stuff better. Like I know some people, Homeboy Taylor has 4 Oak Cliff in Oak Cliff, Texas, because he grew up in Dallas and really cares about the area, wanted to make it better. So that became his purpose. Mm-hmm. So he created a nonprofit to help all these people, to fill these gaps, to do that. And so his life experience very much has shaped his purpose. I don't think that's always the way, but I think that can be one of the things that help people find their purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you look back, if you feel like you're somebody who's like, I don't know exactly what my purpose is, if you look back on your life experiences and can reflect back on the way certain things made you feel or the things that you enjoyed across like just the variety of things that you've been able to do, you might get some key direction from that as well. Also, of course, you know, thinking about what you enjoy, what you like, what you care about, your interest, etc. There's a few kind of sub questions and things you can think about there, because, you know, if somebody's like, oh, what do you like to do? Like we might think about reading or watching movies and those types of things. But like to go a little deeper, what are some questions that people can ask themselves and reflect on? You
can start with like an ideal world. And we do this with our kids whenever I work with an after school program and we have them generate social justice business plans. And so for their ideas for their business, we're like, okay, look at everything in your world. What do you want to make a difference in? Like, what do you care about? And so like, what would you want to change in your world? And they're like, oh, we care about the sea animals and the turtles getting, you know, whatever. So that could very much lead you to something. So looking at, you know, what is an ideal world and thinking about what you care about in that or what you would want to change or what you would want to fix. And it can be big things or small things, even like cleaning up my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. I would add to that too, because I don't really concern myself with overall like ideals of the world and society as much as, or not specifics, right? Because there's all, of course, like the big things, as much as it's easier for me to answer what things do I want to see out of people or like people around me, or like how do I like to connect with people, or like how do I like to see people grow? Because my purpose is more so in like individuals and individual like evolution. And so you can also think about that too. You might be a person focused on humanity. You might be a person focused on like people, things, places, etc. But you might can look at it that way. Another one is you can think back on things that you've done that gave you a skill that could be used for a cause. So if you're like good with language, and that might be something where you're like good with bridging gaps there. If you have certain skills with connecting with kids, if you have certain skills with whatever, that might be connected to your purpose.
And then just thinking about like, what are those things you care about in your community, care about in your friendships, care about in that? You mentioned understanding your values, and I would say that's another pivotal piece in getting to your purpose, is knowing what your values are.
Yeah, and that's a big thing of discovery as well, because sometimes you think certain things are your values and then they're not quite. You can take online quizzes to learn more about that. You can kind of spend some time in reflection and just like try to brain dump, you know, what are the things I value, and maybe think about different categories of life, like in relationships, with family, with friends, with my personal space, with da-da-da-da-da. Like all of those things. You can just do that just to even get to know yourself better. But understanding what's important to you is key in how you show up with people, places, things, and the way you show up is kind of related to like what your purpose is.
And looking at how those influence your life, how you set up your life, how are you living? Is it true with that? And then thinking about how they might relate to what you're doing with the rest of your life and how you spend your time. Another one is to know your own strengths and gifts. And a good way to do this is to talk to the people who know you best. So thinking about maybe the 5 closest people to you, and you can ask them things like, what do you think I'm really good at? What do you think I really enjoy? What lights me up? How do you think I want to leave my mark, or how do you think I will leave my mark on the world?
And a lot of times we are so close to ourselves and to things that you may already have like obvious things that are your purpose or places where you add value, but you're, maybe overthinking or you haven't defined it. And so a lot of times it's easier for people who are close to you and people who are in your network to easily point those things out to you. So in my case, like that's what happened to me, where some people were talking about impact I had on them. And then that's what sparked like, oh, really? Like, that's what y'all think? And then I thought back to other relationships to where I could see that same thing across. And so then it was like, to me, sometimes those things that you just do or that you think about or care about just are so basic and they're just so you that you don't think about it in that way. But a lot of times other people can help identify what your superpowers are.
I think that that's really special. Another way is to get active. So seeking out new experiences and connections, talking with new people, talking with people who you admire, traveling, volunteering with organizations, or working in spaces in areas that you care about. So with animal shelters, or with the unhoused population, or with chefs, if that's something that you're really passionate about. Food, farmers, there's a lot of people talking about they care about gardening and farming. That could be another area too.
And then lastly, you can visualize your ideal self. And just even when you think about the person you want to be and how you want people to think of you and remember you and the legacy you want to leave, what's important for other people to say? That probably would be a reflection of your relationship with them and a reflection of the impact you've had on them, which could have the underlying notes to what your purpose is.
And so they do all these steps. Like, let's say someone's like, all right, I don't know this. So I look at my life. I'm identifying what I care about. It. I know my values, my strengths. I'm active. I'm out here trying new things. I'm visualizing. And I have this. How do I use that to define my purpose?
Then you should be able to look at all of that and get an idea of, and as you're doing all these different things, narrowing it down to like, what type of person do you care about, or what type of thing do you care about, and what environment, and I think you could just write that down. Like, my purpose is to, and it would be some kind of way affect something or whatever. And then I think maybe you just kind of let it hang in your mind for a while. And I think as long as you kind of start to have a direction, because it might start bigger and then get a little more defined. Because I think mine could still probably be like a little more defined. But the concept of it, the idea of what it is there. And now I think you just have that in your mind, because I've had other people say things to me that then I was like, oh yeah, that's a good way to phrase that or to say that. So I think you're just looking at all of this and finding the common denominators. And if it's a few things, maybe there's another common denominator that you can break it down more and more. And or maybe it's okay for it to be like a bigger thing or a broader thing, and over time or at the right times, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's a lifelong thing. Like it can grow, it can change, it can melt the way you do, but I like meld with the way your life moves. But I don't think it's just one set thing forever and always, and you have to always be bound by that. It can be, but I think it's cool to give it space to grow, like yourself.
Yeah, you definitely give it space to grow. And I will say that I think that I see a benefit in having a defined purpose, because now you are able to let that core set the stage for all the things that you say, all the things that you do, all the things that go on with your work, when you say yes or no and make decisions about things. And your life can become much more clear, because you can ask yourself, does this align with that or not? So I will say, like, sure, you're working on it, and narrowing it down. But as you do so, I do think that it can help you to, I don't know, maybe just like live a more intentional life.
Yeah, so hit us this week at Carlie's Couch. Let us know, if this spoke to you, if you're working on finding your purpose, or if you already know it, I would love to hear your definition of your purpose.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.